I quickly scanned the row for their former friend Martin until I remembered that he'd recently been appointed Minister of Supplementary Tugboat Rewiring or something of the sort. And then I happened to notice that the person who was seated in the very last chair with her head at that rather odd angle was obviously Judy. Well, I was lost, blinded, like a caught fish flopping up and down on the floor of a boat. And the strange thing was that apart from sweating and sort of panting, well, more or less exactly as people say when they speak about such moments, I didn't know what to do. I mean, literally, what to do. Stand up, remain seated, stay in, go out. I reached for my naked friends in the plastic bag because there they were on the table right next to me. I looked at them all in the midst of their playing, and their hopeful smiles made me wonder if a more compassionate world might not perhaps come about one day. I went out. It was a black afternoon, and I wandered through the streets, oppressed somehow by an odd sadness. Everywhere I went, the leaves had turned. Traitors? I mean, had they no shame? Oh, well, that sort of thing had been going on for quite some time. One noticed the usual golds and browns and oranges amidst the green. I went into the park. I sat down on a bench. I seem to have developed some variety of what I believe is sometimes called hysterical coughing. And then it suddenly hit me that everyone on earth who could read John Donne was now dead. They were all dead. And as I turned that odd fragment of information around in my mind, I realized that I was the only one left who would even be aware of the passing of this peculiar group. This group which was so special, at least in their own eyes. And my mind went back to a book I'd read when I was very young, about a boy who'd belonged to an ancient tribe in a distant land. And in the course of describing all the customs of the tribe, the book had explained that within the tribe there were many different subgroups or clans, and that whenever the last surviving member of one of these clans would die, well, there would naturally be no one left from their family to mourn them. So then someone who had known that last survivor, and if there was no one left who had known them well, then it would simply be someone who had known them a little, would be appointed to mourn publicly in a sacred spot the passing of that whole extinguished clan. The designated mourner. And I recalled how the boy in the book had performed that function on a certain occasion, lighting a magnificent sacred fire, weeping and remembering. Well, quite nearby in the center of the park stood that rather dark, cavernous, and always overcrowded cafe, to whose allure all visitors to the park would eventually succumb on even the nicest days, despite the well-known quality of its ambiance and food. And I wandered over toward it, went inside, found a table, and ordered a cup of tea from an overworked waitress. Well, along with the tea, and of her own volition, apparently, or maybe it was the policy of the cafe's management, the waitress brought a plate which held a small pastry, a sticky kind of cake whose bottom rested on a bit of paper. And as the waitress left me, I saw my opportunity. First, obviously, I ate the cake. Then I grabbed some matches, which sat nearby me, and I glanced around, and I lit the bit of paper. I am the designated mourner, I said. The bit of paper wasn't very big, but it burned rather slowly because of the cake crumbs. I felt I heard John Donne weeping into a handkerchief as he fell through the floor, plummeting through the earth on his way to hell. His name, once said by so many to be immortal, would not be remembered, it turned out. The rememberers were gone, except for me. And I was forgetting. Forgetting his name, forgetting him, and forgetting all the ones who remembered him. A few patrons and waitresses looked over at me irritably until the fire went out. Then I left the place, and I was back in the park. Would you believe that things were already more peaceful? Well, they were, frankly. I could even feel myself breathing more easily and deeply. Everyone I saw looked calmer than before. We all were just doing much better in every way, without the presence on the earth of our nerve-jangling friends, the dear departed mournees, if that's the right word. I sat back down on the bench I'd been sitting on before. The sun was going down, and I have to say that the colors in the park were quite extraordinary, almost edible, one would have to say. The air was a kind of rose color, and the light which ran through it was a twinkling yellow. What were we waiting for? The appearance of the Messiah? Was all this nothing? I was quite fed up with the search for perfection, and quite amazed by all that I had. The lemonade stand with its lemonade, the cafe with its irritable customers and staff, the carousel, the birds, the squirrels, the trees. I'm sorry, Howard. Your favorite grove was cut down. But so much remains. This light, so beautiful and warm, was not cut down. The flowers at my feet, with their petals that kiss my ankles like little lips, were not cut down. The trembling air and the trembling sky were not cut down. It said in the newspaper that there will be fireworks tonight above the carousel, and right nearby a parade of young dogs, including some of the newest breeds, some for sale. I sat on the bench for a very long time, lost, sunk deep in the experience of unbelievable physical pleasure, perhaps the greatest pleasure we can know on this earth, the sweet, ever-changing caress of an early evening breeze.
You've been listening to The Designated Mourner, written by Wallace Shawn, who played the role of Jack. Judy was played by Deborah Eisenberg, and Larry Pine played the part of Howard. The play was directed by Andre Gregory, with music and sound design by Bruce Odland. The original theatrical production of The Designated Mourner was co-created by Jennifer Tipton and was made possible by Celeste Bartos and Scott Rudin. The Designated Mourner has been published in paperback by Farrar, Straus & Giroux. If you'd like to hear this radio production again, you can hear it on the web at nextbigthing.org.